Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, good afternoon and welcome at the Emotional Intelligence Power Hour session. This is our facilitator, Alna. She will be giving you the talk today. A special welcome to Prof. Naidu there in the back. Thank you for putting aside your time to also be here today. And remember, you are live streamed, so don't pick on your knees or don't fall asleep. Everybody will see you, so please pay attention. So just to introduce Alna, she is a registered industrial psychologist. She worked for companies such as Eskom and Deloitte Consulting. She's now at Thomas International South Africa for the last 2 years as a client development consultant. And there she consults with clients to address needs gaps identified through psychometric assessments, including but not limited to developing high-performing teams, conflict management, managing emotions, understanding emotional intelligence, improving personal performance, developing leadership skills, and sharpening communication skills. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Hi everyone, so I will just be standing here. You can just notify me if I'm not talking into the microphone or if anyone can't hear me. So thank you so much for this time. Emotional intelligence is really a passion of mine, and I love any and every opportunity I get. Will find value through the session as well. So I know you had the opportunity to complete the TQ assessment, which is the emotional intelligence assessment. Maybe just by a show of hands, who did get to complete it and have your reports? Okay, so there's quite a few of you, and those who didn't complete it, I'm sure you still have the opportunity to do it, or we'll see, but hopefully you do. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into my presentation, and just to give you an indication of what we will be covering is we will just look at what is emotional intelligence, Mythbusters regarding emotional intelligence, understanding the TQ model. So the TQ is our emotional intelligence assessment, but I will explain in more detail when we get there. Understand your own results, we will touch on that as well, and then tools for changing behavior, because that is essentially what we are looking at whenever we are looking at emotional intelligence. So yes, Strides is a person who actually helped us develop our emotional intelligence tool. He spent a lot of time, a lot of years researching emotional intelligence. It's ongoing. He still does that. There's a lot of interesting articles that he wrote and still is writing if you are interested in reading it. But he said emotional intelligence is a collection of personality traits concerning people's perception of their emotional abilities. And then these traits will typically look at how satisfied are you with your life, how do you react to conflict, how do you implement coping strategies in for instance, with stress management and things like that. Is there anyone who would maybe like to share their view of emotional intelligence, what you've experienced or what it means to you? Are there anyone that's comfortable to share that with the group? I think we have a mic here. Anyone? No. Okay. Hopefully that means that you will learn a lot today, or are at least open to learn a lot today. Okay. So when we look at emotional intelligence, we will describe it as, first of all, being self-aware. So actually understanding your own emotions, understanding why are you feeling what you feel, perceiving emotions in others, so picking up on emotional cues of others, modifying your behavior based on what you perceive is needed, on your own behavior and reactions you observe from others, motivating yourself, persisting in the face of frustration, so constantly knowing how to motivate yourself to keep going, to don't lose energy, controlling your impulses, think things through, don't just act without thinking of consequences, regulating your own moods, so don't always react to situations or to people without first regulating your emotions internally, empathizing with others, so being able to put yourself into the shoes of others, and then managing your stress and being optimistic. Okay, so that's very broad, and I'm sure if you read about it, you will find quite a bit more definitions, as it is such a multifaceted a construct that we can't really define it in one sentence or only with a few words. So most of you will probably know this quote by Aristotle. He said, anyone can become angry, that is easy, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, and for the right reason, and in the right way, that is not easy. And you can think back on this quote as I go through the presentation and recognize that everything is about self-awareness. If I'm not self-aware, I won't in the first place be able to identify, is this an appropriate situation to become angry or not? So everything starts with that self-awareness, understanding your own emotions first. Okay, so the way we look at emotional intelligence, as I said in the beginning with the definition, is we look at emotional intelligence from a personality trait base. So your personality then informs your emotional intelligence. So we all know that personality is only about 10% your genes, so that's what you have from your parents, your grandparents, and that would lie in that area there. Then we have, sorry for those, I'm pointing maybe behind your back, but I will just switch it up. So the 10% will be there. Then you have your beliefs, you have your values, you have your attitudes, and all of those are the things that actually inform your behavior. So this is below the surface, the things that we won't know if we don't consciously think about it, the things that in some cases people have to inform us about. So to give you just a very simple example of how we look at this, we say, okay, how are beliefs and values and attitudes formed that actually inform our personality? So when I was a child, my parents told me all about the tooth fairy. So whenever a tooth came out, I had to write a little note to the tooth fairy to ask for money, because my parents said they bring you money, they buy the tooth, and then they go and build houses for their community. So as a maybe 6-7-year-old, you firmly believe this, and every time a tooth goes, you are so excited about your note, about the money that's coming, and you go to bed in the evenings, you leave the tooth there with a little note, and the next morning you wake up with a note. So then when I grow a little bit older, say I'm now 8 years, it's the last tooth that goes, Then I wake up in the middle of the night and I see, okay, but it's actually my father that's coming in and putting the note in the shoe. There's no real tooth fairy. So then I form the belief that everything my parents have told me before is a complete lie. I cannot trust them at all. So then I form the value that no one is trustworthy. I have to fight for myself. And then the attitude I have is that I'm going to be skeptical about everything I see. I'm not going to trust people. And the behavior relates to that as well. So I become a rebel. I don't believe anything anyone tells me. I want to explore for myself and obviously make a lot of mistakes through that way. But you can also form the belief that so after I caught my father, he can come to me, he can explain to me, this is a tradition we do with children. We help you to develop your imagination because we want you to be creative, and this is a way through which we achieve that. And this is just a fun way that parents enjoy doing with their children, interacting and creating a bit of fun while you grow up. So then I will have a value that, oh, there are two sides to a story. I don't necessarily always, my story is not necessarily always the right story. I have to look at the bigger picture. So the value I form is always ask more questions to understand. My attitude is that I listen, I am open to new experience. And my behavior that I will have is someone who's open, who encourage change, who encourage people to look at different sort of situations. Okay, so whatever we discuss in the session today, and if you read your TQ report, or if you haven't done it and you read it in the future, remember that these things below the surface, they are the things that we address in the TQ. Okay, so I just want to do a few Mythbusters with you. So maybe also just to get your energy going, I will put up the statement. If you agree with the statement, meaning you think it's true, stand up for me. And if you don't believe it's true, then you can sit. Okay, so the first one we look at, behavior is driven by emotions. If you agree with that, stand up. Behavior is driven by emotions. Okay. Everyone up who wants to be up? Is there a fence sitter? Oh, you mean to be? Okay, stand, that's fine. Okay, so that's, I would say, almost 70-30. Do you think? Okay, so you can take your seat again. Behavior is definitely driven by our emotions, and that's everything I just explained in the graph before. So what we do are informed and I reason things out. I'm not driven by my emotions, but we are referring to that emotion competence, emotional intelligence, and that is your personality in essence. Okay, next one. Working with people means working with emotions. If you agree, stand up. Okay, that's quite interesting. Can I have the people who's remaining to sit? Can you perhaps just... You can sit. Hello? Hello? Okay, you can sit. Is anyone... Is no one... Why did you ladies... Who sat down? Please share with us. Will you please share with us? Oh, you didn't want to stand. Okay, so who remains seated for real? Okay, so we have a lot of work to do here. I think we're going to have to start perhaps with getting us to share. That's part of self-awareness. We will see it in the next few slides. So I'm very interested, those who think you don't work with emotions, if you work with people, what you think. Maybe you can share on a blog or something, then we can read it. Because people are emotions. You can't separate the two. Okay, I'm going to put this off. Okay. No. Do you put it off on your side? Okay. The light is still on. Okay, let me use it. Okay. Emotions are only human capital's problem. Who agrees with that? You don't? Oh, everyone is agreeing. So it's easier to sit down than to stand up. Okay, but that's a good sign. As we discovered in the previous point, that if you work with people, you work with emotions. Therefore, emotions is not only human capital's baby, it's everyone's baby. Yes. Oh, so HR. So your human resources department. Okay. Do you want to change your votes? Okay. Emotions are contagious, both positive and negative. Who agrees? Stand up if you agree. Okay, you can sit down again. Do you want... Okay, do you prefer that? Okay. Don't bring your personal problems to work is a realistic motto to have. Raise your hand if you agree with that. Okay. Does anyone who raised their hand are willing to share your point of view? Will you share? Okay.
I personally think that you are here to do your job, and that your job should stay at work and your personal life should stay at home. That's my personal opinion.
Do the rest who raise their hands agree with that? Does it make... Do you want to share? Yes, Salehan, okay.
I don't completely agree with that. I think your personal life is where you get your validation from. You don't actually get it. You shouldn't get it from work. You should get it from the spaces outside. But managing that is very difficult. So the ideal is to be able to manage and control it. But it's a deeply reflective exercise. It's not very easy to do. But in an ideal world, that, you know. So is it realistic? Only if you constantly work on it, yes. But if you don't, no.
Okay, very good answer. Thank you for that. And so we're very used to the perspective that leave your emotions at home and come to work. But in reality, if we view your personality traits as part of your emotional intelligence, that's not a realistic view to have, because motivation is one of them. So you're telling me you want people to leave their motivation at home. In certain instances, you're telling me people need to leave empathy at home, where that's really a core part or competency of the role. So you can't separate that, and that links to your answer. There's no quick answer here, because there's a lot of reflection, a lot of self-awareness in the way you bring your emotions to work. So yes, the key thing here is that you bring your emotions to work, but the way you actually exchange the emotions, the way you regulate your own emotions, your level of self-awareness, that's the things that needs to be in place in order to function effectively and productively. Not by saying, I don't have emotions at work. That's not realistic. Okay. Do you think emotional intelligence is a predictor of job success? Raise your hands if you believe emotional intelligence is a predictor of job success. Okay, that's probably also a 70-30 around. So there are quite a lot of research done on emotional intelligence being a predictor of job success. This doesn't give us the key now to say, but I'm going to do an assessment on someone and don't appoint them based on emotional intelligence. That's not what we're saying. But we're saying that as employers, as a colleague, as a manager, as whoever you are in a workplace, you have to take responsibility to develop your own emotional intelligence as well as those who work for you and around you, because that is what will ensure sustained and long-term job success essentially. Okay. Problems at work are most of the times caused by unmet emotional needs. If you agree with that, raise your hand. Okay. You look as if you don't mind sharing with us your opinion.
Your emotions is the fuel for the actions. If you don't have fuel, there will be no action. If my car doesn't have fuel, it will not drive. So it's emotions and what you do, the actions and the success of your job is intricately linked. You cannot separate that at all. So no emotions, no fuel, no action, no success.
Thank you. Someone who makes my life easier. Absolutely 100% correct. So if you are motivated by external factors, then it means that a financial need becomes an emotional need as well, because that is the fuel that keeps you going. So I think there's one more, then I'll make the link. Career derailment is related to the absence of emotional intelligence. Who agrees with that? Hands up if you agree. Okay, not a lot. And this is probably negotiable because it's not the only factor that can cause career derailment, but it's certainly something that can cause career derailment. So what I wanted to demonstrate through this exercise is that where we need to start is by changing our perception of emotions, because the difficulty we have to agree or disagree with some of these myths is because of the perception we have of what emotions are. So people automatically think when I say, should you bring your emotions to work? You say no, because you link it to someone who constantly complains, someone who doesn't do their work because they are distracted by emotions, distract other people by emotions. But in reality, we are emotional beings, so you can never separate a person with their emotions. Therefore, the aim should be to view emotions differently and to rather focus on strategies to create self-awareness, to work with these emotions, to get us to a place where we will function as productive and optimal as we possibly can. And that is by having a healthy view of your own emotions, of other people's emotions, meaning you have emotional intelligence or emotional competence. Okay, so I already made reference to the TQ. So the TQ stands for Trait Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire, meaning that it measures emotional intelligence, but it's based on personality traits because of the fact that we say your personality traits inform your emotional intelligence. So it is there to help you understand how well do you perceive, understand, and manage your own emotions, but as well emotions of other people. So this is one of the tools, one of the ways to help us create self-awareness, and it's one of many. There are many ways, and the psychometric assessment should never be inform your identity or put you in a box, but it's a tool for us to understand ourselves and others better. Okay. So in the emotional intelligence assessment, you guys receive like a descriptive summary report. But if they talk about more than others or less than others, this is where it comes from. So this is just important for you to understand how the assessment is scored. So it is a normative assessment, meaning that there's a population group, a representative of South Africans, different ages, different genders, different races, languages, culture groups. So an inclusive population group. It measures 15 facets, that's specific personality traits, and then you are compared to the norm group. So if you receive a percentile of 29 to 69, again, this is not in your reports, but if you do receive a full report, you will see the percentiles. So a 29 to 69th percentile means same as most people. So I have the same level of empathy as most other people, or a 69 and above means more than most people. So I have more empathy than most other people, and a 29th to 1 percentile would be less than most people. So if you see that, remember it's percentiles, it's not a percentage score. And remember, there is no good or bad. We are measuring personality. You cannot have the wrong personality. It's all again about understanding yourself, understanding the effect you have and your behavior have on others, and thinking of what are possible contextual advantages in my role, for instance, and what might be contextual disadvantages. So to name a very simple example again is if I'm a forensic investigator, I work on high-profile murder cases, and I have less empathy than most people, that would be a contextual advantage in my role, because I'm going to think only logical and factual. I will take the emotions out of it. I won't be persuaded by emotions and things like that. So that's the way you should view your emotional intelligence results, is to say what are positives if it's a high score or a low score, and what are certain things I need to be aware of. And a lot of the times it's not to say I need to change my score, who I am. It's just to become aware of, because of the way I am, what influence does it have on others and others' behavior, and vice versa as well. If someone deals with me that's different from me, the opposite, how will I react to them and understand them? Okay. So, who of you are familiar with the Johari Window? Okay. So, what we do with the Johari Window, this is a tool for us to create self-awareness. So remember, the cornerstone of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, understanding your own emotions. So I will refer quite a bit to self-awareness, because without self-awareness, you will not have emotional intelligence, and that's the link there. So what the Johari Windows actually does, it creates opportunity for us to get to know ourselves better, to reflect, but it's actually based on a principle of trust. So it goes from the viewpoint that when you share with other people and when you accept feedback and criticism from others in a positive way, you actually build trust with those persons. So it's built on a foundation of trust. And then, so if we start with the bottom right-hand quadrant, that's the unknown area. So it's not known to yourself and it's not known to others. So that's possibly something like undiscovered talent. So I've never played piano before, and now I decide to go for lessons, and I discover that I am very good at playing piano. So now it becomes open to myself, actually. Sorry. So it becomes known. Sorry. Yeah. Known to myself. But unless I share it with others, it won't become known with others, to others as well. So depending on what you share. And then we look at the private quadrant, so the bottom left-hand side. So these are things that's known to yourself, but it's not known to others. So it's secrets, it's things you deliberately choose not to share with other people, either because it's a very sensitive topic, it's something you are embarrassed about. Whatever the reason is, you know about it, but you don't share it with anyone else. Then we have our blind spot area. So they talk about the blind self. So that's the top right-hand side, blind spot area. So these are things that's actually known to other people, but it's not known to yourself. Meaning that you are completely unaware of the fact that you frustrate people because you constantly interrupt them, because you're a very enthusiastic, passionate person, so they tell stories and you interrupt them with your stories because you're so excited, but no one has actually told you, this is bothering me about you because I perceive you as someone who cannot listen to me. Okay, so there are many blind spots, and as we discover our blind spots, they will form new blind spots. So it's a constant journey of reflecting, of becoming more self-aware to know your blind spots. Then we have the top left-hand quadrant is the open, so known to self, known to others, the open quadrant. And this is where people actually function most productively and most effectively. This is where you want to operate in most instances of your life. And if we take it from a business perspective, this is where you want your team to operate in as well. So what the aim then should actually be is to make this open area bigger. So increase what you know about yourself, but also increase what you tell others about yourself. Because by doing that, you create trust. By showing people, I actually have weaknesses. There are actually things I struggle with. First of all, you acknowledge that to yourself by sharing it with other people. So you put yourself in a place where you can process that. Say, for instance, if it's something that really embarrasses you, if you haven't told anyone about it, it's going to be very big in your head. So you're going to constantly think of it and think, I was such a fool, how could I have said that, and constantly feel bad about it. The moment you share it with someone and they tell you, oh no, that's nothing, this happened to me, it's 10 times worse, it's going to be out of your head. It's not going to be a personal issue anymore. Again, that is the same for really deeper emotional issues. If you come to a point where you share that, you put yourself in a position to process it, to deal with it, to work with it. Okay, and it builds trust with others. So it really does good for building relationships at work, in your personal life as well. Yes, so the focus there should always be ask for feedback. Don't be sensitive for criticism, because that's the only way your blind spot will be exposed, and again, placing you in a position where you can work on it, and share more with others in order to build trust, in order to show your vulnerability and say, but we are all human, rather let's help each other grow than keeping everything on my own shoulders. Okay. Any questions at this stage? There will be a questioning and answer section at the end. Okay, so what I just said, don't mind criticism. If it is untrue, disregard it. If it is unfair, keep from irritation. If it is ignorant, just smile. If it is justified, then it is not criticism. So learn from it and grow from it. But if you are not self-aware, again, you won't be able to identify what criticism are true or false, or really going to make a difference or not. Okay, so it all starts with self-awareness again. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the TQ assessment. I'm not going to go into detail at all. If you have questions based on your reports, you are welcome to make contact with your assessment team to address those things. But I just quickly want to talk through what do we measure with the emotional intelligence tool. And again, like I said, this is just one of the ways we can create awareness for ourselves. Okay. So in the TQ score, we have a first level, which is the global score. So that's a percentile of all your 15 facets together, where you lie in terms of the population group. The global score is not really important for any sort of consideration because it doesn't give you any information. The value of the assessment lies within the facets. Okay. So the second level, there are 4 factors. Each factor are being informed by several facets. So you have a well-being factor. So in your reports, if I'm correct, you will have a summary about your well-being, your self-control, your emotionality, your sociability, and adaptability and self-motivation. So it doesn't go into detail with these facets, but it's just for you to know, if we talk about your well-being, what are the facets that actually measured your well-being. So the first one is happiness, there's optimism, there's self-esteem, there's self-control, which is emotion regulation, impulse control, stress management. We have emotionality, which is empathy, emotion perception, emotion expression, relationships. We have sociability. The facets are emotion management, assertiveness, social awareness, and you have 2 independent facets, which are the third level, and that's adaptability and also self-motivation. So I'm very, very briefly going to talk about it. So happiness looks at how content you are right here, right now. People who are high in happiness are the ones who typically tend to focus on what's good in my life, what do I have, and don't concern themselves too much about what's not in place. Where a lower happiness score, people who's typically serious, not easy, happy-go-lucky, go with the flow type of personalities, and they are the people who tend to focus on what do I need to fix, what's not in place, what can be better. Optimism, your future view. So high optimism, believe everything will work out. Low optimism, look at risks and challenges, and they rather plan. They think through planning everything will work out. So with each high and low score, there's certain positives and negatives. I'm not going to go through that because we don't have time. But in your report, you will be able to read about it. So say, for instance, with optimism, if I'm too optimistic and I am a project manager, then I will just say, no, we'll have it done in 3 months' time, no problem at all, jump in, and after 2 weeks you see, okay, no, this is a much bigger project than I thought, I won't be able to have it done. And a very low optimistic score, a positive about that is they are the people that bring reality to the workplace, to a group. So it's just about, do I give it in a positive manner, or do I shoot people's ideas down by bringing the risks forward, which is not the correct way. Self-esteem looks at your level of self-respect, of where you are at life, your abilities and what you've achieved. So a lower self-esteem, typically then people who focus more again on what they still want to achieve, people who will benefit from more positive self-talk, recognizing themselves for their achievements, learning to share achievements with others. It doesn't come natural to them. And a very high self-esteem, people who are very much focused on their achievements, but they can sometimes not be open for feedback and criticism. Okay, then self-control, we have emotion regulation, so how well you regulate your emotions internally. High emotion regulation are people who don't get distracted by emotions, they can still remain focused. A lower emotion regulation are people who typically tend to be distracted, very much aware of their emotions. Impulse control, high impulse control, always think of the consequences, plan properly, don't act impulsively. Lower impulse control, people that can act a bit quicker. This is also something in some roles that's actually needed for people who can make a bit more impulsive decisions because the role requires that from them. And then stress management, your capacity for stress management. So we're not looking at can you handle stress or not, we look at what's your capacity. So someone with lower stress management, they are people, I always say, you feel the stress in here. You become anxious, you always immediately aware, I'm under pressure, it's stressful. They tend to make people around them aware that they are stressed out. Where people with high stress management, it takes a long time for them to actually feel the anxiety. So they can take a lot more. It's also people who tend to take on more and more and more on their plates. Okay, then we have emotionality. So we have empathy, which is basically your ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and also see things from their viewpoint. So a high empathy is someone who find it easy to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Low empathy, someone who typically struggle to always understand why are you this upset about the situation, or why are you having this reaction, it doesn't make sense to me. Emotion perception, that's how well you understand your own emotions and others' emotions as well. So high emotion perception, people who very rarely feel emotionally confused. They probably learned throughout their life to reflect on what they are feeling, but they're also good on picking up on emotional cues. So the people who will immediately see something is wrong with you without you even opening your mouth. They just have that instinct. Emotion expression, how comfortable you express your emotions. So very high, you will walk with your emotions on your sleeve. Very low, you will struggle to actually speak and express your emotions. Relationships, again, this is your capacity for relationships. Someone have a lower capacity for building relationships with others. These are the people that have their selected friends, they invest in them, but they don't necessarily see everyone as a friend. They also find it a little bit easier to move on from relationships if it's negative or just the time passed, we're in a different area of our life and we are comfortable moving on from that relationship. Where people with high relationship, big capacity, so they see everyone as their friend. Okay, they like to engage, they like to form friendships at work and at every hobby. They have a friend from grade 1 and from matric and from university and from their first 3 jobs. That's just how they operate. Okay, we have sociability. So first one is emotion management. That's how you manage other people's emotions. So can you influence their state of mind? So high emotion management, they are just people who prefer to go to someone with the objective to influence how they think or feel, where someone with lower emotion management typically are from the perspective, I will give you your space until you feel better or whatever the case is, and make them sort out their emotions. Assertiveness, how frank and forthright you are. So very assertive people, high scores, are very comfortable expressing, standing up for themselves, but then it can grow into aggression if it's not managed properly. And a low assertiveness, they are people, they know they are right, but they still will keep quiet. So just not comfortable expressing yourself. And obviously that's something, no matter in what role you are, what you are doing, it's something all of us can work on if it's low. Just to, in a positive way, stand up for yourself and make your voice heard as well. Social awareness is how comfortable you are in unfamiliar social contexts. So high social awareness, you can throw them into a room full of people they don't know. They will be the life of the party, go and engage with everyone. A low social awareness are the people who get into the room, wait until you identify maybe someone you know or a friendly face, ease into the situation, start a conversation with one person and get comfortable that way. Adaptability, your reaction to change, so very high on adaptability, very open to change, and low on adaptability. Typically people, and listen carefully, this is not people that can't adapt. It's typically people who need a lot of information, time to prepare, know why are we changing, what will be the benefits, what's the outcome, what are we moving towards. They need all the information and they need time, and then they will adapt. It doesn't just come naturally with them without asking questions. Self-motivation, so this will be, are you internally or externally motivated? So a high self-motivation score means you are more internally motivated, and a lower self-motivation score or a low score will be you are externally motivated. Okay. So, yes, if you have more questions on the tool, you can address that with your assessment team. But for now, we're going to quickly move on. So if you do the assessment and you have a little bit of more insight on your own behavior, your personality traits, then the hard work actually begins, because we give you the opportunity to know who you are and what is causing certain reactions that I'm aware of. I'm acting this way, but I'm not always aware of what is causing it or where is it coming from. So now you have the responsibility to actually do something about it. And here are just a few things that you can consider specifically to change your behavior. So we're not saying we need to change our personality. We're looking at, if we become aware of our personality, how can we then change our behavior to be more productive, to form better relationships with others? So the first very important thing is to articulate your feelings. So this is not as easy as it sounds, especially for people who have the belief that we don't talk about emotions. Emotions doesn't have a place in the job, but no one can read minds. No one can just know how you feel if you don't tell them how you feel. So we first of all need to learn to say, I need to word whatever I'm feeling. First for myself, again, to create that understanding for myself, to start to process, and then hopefully it will make it easier to share with other people if you get to a point where you can articulate what you feel. So we need to practice self-talk. This is very important. So we need to actually have a conversation in our head constantly every day to say, if I was in this situation, what actually went well? Where can I tell myself, you really handled this so well. Please remember to do the same next time. But you also need to ask yourself, what didn't go well? If there was conflict, for instance, why did the conflict start? What could I have done differently? And these things sound stupid as we hear them, because we have heard all of this since we were all small children. But how many of us actually apply this? How many of us sit after each day and think of your behavior and your emotions and the effect your emotions is having on yourself and on others? So reframe negative thoughts in a positive way. So look at a negative situation by creating a positive outcome, a positive solution for that problem. If we just dwell in a lot of negative thoughts, it's going to be very difficult for ourselves to get ourselves out of it and to actually find a solution for whatever we're going through. But if you look at it from a perspective that you can actually change the outcome, you can do something about it to make it positive, then you will start to feel better and you will be able to be creative again to find a solution. Look at the reactions of others, and this is specifically reaction of others on your own behavior. So you need to start to see, if I talk in this way, this is the reaction I'm getting. If I give instructions in this manner, it actually motivates my team. If I arrange this with the team, I get them to be more productive. So only by looking at the reaction you get from your words and your deeds will you be able to adjust if that is necessary. Then notice the build-up before the trigger. This is only possible if you are self-aware and if you think of your emotions. Then you will get to a place where you see, I'm putting myself in a difficult situation. The next step is that I'm going to shout and scream on someone, maybe throw something in the office. So you have to start to realize what are the triggers and stop before the bomb actually bursts. Observe without trying to fix. So sometimes we must really just feel our emotions, even if it's anger, frustration, being sad. We must put ourselves in a place where we really just say, but now I'm feeling frustrated. Deal with that for a while and then find a way to move on. So research says that it takes 6 seconds for emotional chemicals to actually be absorbed into your body. So sometimes you just have to give yourself that time. We think 6 seconds is very quickly, but how many times do we start to fight back before the person even finished their sentences? So if we can hold that in and we can settle the emotion and through awareness know this is the emotion I'm feeling, you'll be able to stop yourself from the trigger. Recognize recurring patterns. So this is where neuroscience actually helps us. So the natural way of your of your brain is just to follow neural pathways that already exist. That's why you do the same thing over and over, even if you know you're not getting the results you need, the outcome is not positive, you keep on doing that. So to change a neural pathway, first of all, you need to be aware of the pathways that shouldn't be there, and then only in 21 days the pathway will start to change, and 63 to 66 days a habit will be formed. That means you have to, for between 63 and 66 days, you have to actively think about what you want to change every single day for 66 days before a new pathway will be formed in your brain, before it will become a habit. So it's not an easy task. It's not something we do overnight and just wake up and it's done. Question your stories, even if you believe them. Always know there's two sides, maybe three, maybe five. The way you're perceiving a situation is not necessarily always the way the situation is. So Brené Brown is on Netflix with a talk, A Call for Courage or something like that. So she says she and her husband learned the habit of saying, okay, so in my head, this is what I'm hearing from you, from what I'm observing from you. Is this correct? And then he can actually reply and say, no, this is not what I mean by not talking to you. I am just stressed about work or whatever the case is. And so constantly question your story and know there's maybe a different side to it than you just assume there is. Observe others, again, this time not on your reaction, but just to see how do people interact, what causes conflict, what causes motivation, energy, people to be positive. If you don't observe people, and we're very fortunate, we come to a workplace between people, we can do this every single day by just taking a few minutes and actually looking how are people operating, what comes naturally, what are the typical behaviors you see from them. That will help you to create that self-awareness. And then reflect every day. So take time every single day to sit down and say, where am I improving? What do I still need to do? Where are negative outcomes that I need to change? That's the only way you will actually create that awareness and put yourself in a position where you can move forward. Okay, so I do have one slide left that I'm not going to do because we are running out of time. So we have a few minutes for questions and answers. So anyone with questions, please feel free to ask them now. Any hands? Any questions? Yeah. Sorry, she's bringing you a mic. Just wait a moment.
I'm a little bit sick, sorry. I want to note that we've been now made aware of emotional intelligence, and what I understand of it is it's something that you constantly have to be aware of your own emotions and your own thoughts and how you react and relate to it to a person. Now, in our personal capacity or at home, it's a lot easier to control the narrative. You understand that it's easier for you to say to your husband or your friend or your sister, whoever, in that capacity that I don't appreciate the way that you handled the situation. I don't appreciate the way that you spoke to me. Now, what ideas or what tools can you give on how to implement my awareness of myself, my emotions at work. Because it's not so easy at work to control the narrative when you're working with a colleague, when you're dealing with a colleague, when you're dealing with a manager or dealing with the director. And that in that regard, if you say to them, but okay, I don't necessarily appreciate the way you spoke to me or how you handled that situation, whether because you are more assertive, it will be taken as you being aggressive or you talking back. And then taking it into a cultural setup as well, with black people or with non-white people, it's normally believed that when you deal with a grown-up, you can't talk back or you can't say whatever it is that you're feeling to the grown-up because then you're rude. So what things do you suggest how we can, in the workplace, learn to control the narrative a little bit more so that you are not open, you're not exposed to things that you won't handle at home, but now because you're at work, you have to handle it because this person can't handle if you say to them, but I don't appreciate that or I don't necessarily like you dealing with it in that way.
Okay, so the next slide is actually go about practices to cultivate emotional intelligence in the workplace. I will share the article. It's Goleman's work, Daniel Goleman, who's a big father of emotional intelligence, with colleagues. I'll share that with Natasha. I don't know if it can be shared with everyone. We'll arrange that. But so there's a few things. Obviously, it always have to start at some point, and it's always very simple. So first of all, creating a platform where people can speak. So for instance, having a Monday team meeting where you can share whatever you want to without having anyone replying to you. So in that way, you give yourself and your team members the opportunity to share what was good, what wasn't good, and you give people the opportunity to go back and reflect on that before making any decisions, before just reacting to that. But the essence is to start to build emotional intelligence as part as a culture. So to say, okay, first of all, evaluate what emotional competence is necessary in this environment to focus the most productive and effective that we can, and then start to implement first. For instance, doing an emotional intelligence assessment, then putting a coaching, mentoring type of relationship into place for wherever there's struggles, or just for people to have a platform to express. So the key is to create platforms where you can express freely and where the mutual understanding is that people won't take offense or will become angry. Unfortunately, nothing changes if the attitude is wrong or if people is not open to change. So the first step is to say, let's talk about emotional intelligence. Why is it important? Why do we need it to work together better? So that's starting to create that culture by first of all making everyone aware of why this is important. And if you are a manager, not reacting if someone does something that's inappropriate, but rather go back and explain to them why this was inappropriate, why this behavior is not acceptable, and then help them to find a solution. So creating platforms, definitely the first step. Any other questions? There's a question.
Thanks for the talk. This is a little bit of a strange thing to ask, but if I don't ask it, then it's going to bother me tonight when I'm trying to fall asleep. I'm wondering, do you have any tips on how to get good feedback from other people? Because in my work every single day, a lot of what we do is teaching our students how to give each other feedback, and us as the lecturers actually giving feedback. But I found that I'm struggling myself to get good feedback. And what I mean by that is that I find that a lot of the things that people say to me are like compliments, and compliments are nice. They're good for your esteem, but they don't help you grow. So you can't control other people, but is there anything that you can do to encourage other people to give you more constructive, honest, real feedback?
Ask them.
I've tried that. I've tried that.
So again, everything comes back to that Johari window. When everything starts with you. So when you start to share with people, when you should perhaps be the first one to start to give constructive feedback, then people will find it easier to give you constructive feedback. So the basic psychology answer is start with whatever you want to see and do it yourself, and then people will follow with that. But also, we tend not to be direct in saying, listen, I want constructive feedback, I won't take offense, please look at me and don't give me any feedback if it's not constructive feedback. I don't want to know what I'm doing good, I want to know where I can develop. So it is a process, because the trusting relationship should be in place, the awareness should be there, but if you start to do it, you will probably see people responding to that. Other questions? Are you happy with the answer? Still have to.
That's literally what I have been doing. So I think deep down I'm wondering if maybe it's not something to do with other people that's completely out of my control. Because I am a very direct person, and I do tell people I don't mind criticism. I don't mind, you telling me where my faults and my shortcomings are. But I can't seem to get. And I'm starting to seem aggressive even now. It seems like I'm looking for a negative response from other people. So,
Yeah.
but that's not possible.
Any other questions? Is that all? Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You must have a lovely afternoon.
Sorry, just before you leave, just 2 minutes, I just want to ask you to please complete the evaluation form. And then remember, the healthy eating habits is on 17 May, this Friday. Bullying in the workplace, 15 May. And then from HR department side, I will send the link to all staff members. We will be equipping you with monthly droplets on enhancing your self-awareness, tools for developing emotional intelligence at work as well. And also from September 2019, we will be rolling out EQ workshops to departments and teams if you want to inquire about that as well. Okay, thank you.